Good late Friday afternoon, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, tracking a severe thunderstorm warning for portions of Baker, Nassau, and Charlton counties until 5 p.m. Seeing some of this Axe and Roy pop up, and at points become pretty intense here. Not overwhelming, but I know we had a pretty strong, not severe, but some, strong type of thunderstorm activity toward this dark area here about 45 minutes ago, causing that power to flicker on and off, and we got about 4/10 of an inch here. And toward the north, the severe thunderstorm warning includes portions of Baker, Nassau, and Charlton counties until 5 p.m. The latest update at 4:47, a severe thunderstorm is located 7 miles southwest of St. George, 18 miles southwest of Callahan, moving south at about 10 miles an hour, 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, quarter-size hail. The storyline with this, apparently the public has sent in some reports to kind of cause this alert maybe to be issued, or at least to justify this, because they are saying the source of this is the public here in the National Weather Service in Jacksonville statement. So that's kind of the storyline there right now. Again, a severe thunderstorm warning until 5 p.m. for portions of Nassau, Baker, and Charlton counties. So Baker, Charlton, and Nassau, that's what we're looking at right now. A severe thunderstorm warning in place. So wanted to be with you here. It's a pretty rural area overall, but I know you're probably hearing a lot of thunder there around the Pontiac community there. As we're looking here and as we're tracking things, you're hearing that, thunder rumbling for sure there. And the worst is just south of State Road 94, but right around County Road 127. So again, it's a severe thunderstorm warning in play here until 5 p.m. We're watching this very carefully. Let me go over to the velocity mode, and then this is pop-up stuff. This is pop-up stuff here is what I want to reiterate to the viewers at home. So this is not something that's organized. It might have something organized toward next Thursday, next Friday locally, but this is more like what you get in the summertime, because we got so warm here today around Stark. We got to 87 degrees, and we had 4/10 of an inch of rain, give or take, and guess what the temperature is now? 68 degrees, so it has dropped a lot here outside. I know we're looking at the wind numbers on here, and you might not necessarily see a lot of the temperature numbers, in the areas that had that rain come on through, because it was isolated, but it can be very beneficial in terms of that precip. I'll put the temperature numbers up, but you also have to watch out for that lighting. You kind of see the disparity here pretty good. I mean, it's not quite the 68 like what we have here east of Stark on my thermometer, my Davis weather station, but 73 there on Keystone. Look at that, they're 90 degrees in Live Oak, so you can kind of tell where some areas have had that precip come on through. Again, you don't like the lightning down. We have to be, giving you the latest when we have severe weather like this. Again, a severe thunderstorm warning until 5 p.m. for portions of Baker, Nassau, and Charlton counties. 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, quarter-size hail. Those are your threats here. Taylor and St. George included in this warning. In the summertime, at points we have stuff like this. It's just so rampant with these warnings popping up. Maybe in more rural area like this, we wouldn't pop in, but because these are pretty rare, to get, still this time of year, these severe thunderstorm warnings, want to make sure you're aware. We haven't had that much this year because we've been so dry. So to actually have a warning pop up in the area, I think it's important to be with you guys. We got another warning now in Georgia. Let's go ahead and jump on over it in Baker in Georgia now. Not just Baker, Florida, but Baker, Georgia now. And Mitchell in Georgia, severe thunderstorm warning until 5:30. At 4:50, a severe thunderstorm was located over Camilla, moving north. So the one in Florida is moving south. This one's moving north here. That's how storms are when you're close to that summertime pattern. But this one's moving north at 15 miles an hour, 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, and quarter-sized hail. A trained weather spotter reported quarter-sized hail near Camilla. So this is a confirmed severe thunderstorm warning here now. A confirmed severe warning here for the Camilla area right there. You see around State Road 37. We're getting that concern here this afternoon. So now we have 2 severe thunderstorm warnings on the board, not just, right there, the Florida-Georgia line, but another one up into Georgia as well. So things, getting pretty active here. Not an overwhelming situation by any stretch. A lot of areas is still dry here as we're tracking, but see an advisory in a Marion there. You can see it pretty good from the distant radar, but as you go ahead and look back on in here, we do have a severe thunderstorm warning here this afternoon for portions of Baker, Nassau, and Charlton. This is, at the state line there until about 5 p.m. So Again, we're tracking this very carefully and toward the weather center. Again, you have the different outdoor events that could be impacted in general. We have things like Gator Nationals. I know the Gator River runs tomorrow morning, though, so that's something not necessarily as big of an impact as we're tracking here. But yeah, definitely got to be aware when you're outside. It's been kind of a calm pattern. You don't even think about lightning hardly when it's been so long since we've had it around. Maybe it kind of, you kind of forget about that danger. So you got to be very aware. I know we posted about an hour ago about the storm moving in toward Bradford towards Dart because, we didn't even have an advisory with it, but, it had some interesting, just the idea of the lightning showing up pretty rampant, some interesting characteristics, and didn't want folks to be caught off guard. And right after I posted that, we had the power flicker here on and off east of Star, a good bit there, unfortunately. I mean, not overwhelming, but, I don't think it damaged anything here in the weather center, but just, a whole bunch of, on and offs with the lights and stuff probably isn't the best for things here as we're tracking things. So again, just continuing to give you guys the very latest on what's going on this afternoon. I know nationally there's some big stories. We're not covering national as much as we have, in the past here, as we're shifting some things around. But as we go ahead and let me just go ahead and take off the warning information here and show you a little bit of national while we're on, because that is a big story. There's been some pretty crazy tornadic activity in Michigan here this afternoon. They were kind of on the edge of the, they weren't on that, it weren't in the higher risk. They were on the edge of a higher risk, I'd say, but really they weren't even on the edge of a higher risk. They were, let me put the risk up here. This might be from earlier, more of a marginal type of risk here. And we've had a pretty nasty storm here that's been tracking for a while. That's caused a lot of damage. This is a super sailor thunderstorm here. And apparently we've had damage there, in quite a few different spots, including around the Three Rivers community in Michigan. So you see some of those different reports. Just kind of reading some of them here on the screen real quick in Michigan real quick as we look up that way. Numerous reports of significant damage on the southwest side of Three Rivers, Michigan in St. Joseph County. Storm chasers and emergency management confirmed multiple tornado touchdowns prior to the damage, and then a report of a tornado hitting a Menards store and lifting at least a portion of the roof off of a main building, and a storage unit nearby was also damaged by the tornado, debris being seen there on video. So that was not good. You don't expect that in Michigan, especially, maybe in one of the lower type of risks you'll get. So to get that up there was definitely probably catching some folks off guard. And we still got that storm right now in Calhoun County, Michigan. It is a confirmed tornado still, maybe at point it hasn't been confirmed, but this has, gotten, just really rampant here this afternoon, this danger up that way. I know this is all by itself, so it can take advantage, even if the environment isn't just overwhelming, it can take advantage of what's available to cause some major damage. About to be, if it's not right now, actually crossing over, I think it just did cross over the Interstate I-69 there. So make sure you follow your local meteorologist up in that area, on the national storylines. But we got to get back to our local information right now as we go ahead and get back on into Georgia here. We have a severe thunderstorm warning. This one popped up since we've been on. You see Mitchell and Baker in Georgia at 5:30. A severe thunderstorm was located over Camilla, moving north at 15 miles an hour. So again, that's kind of the storyline there. We also have a severe thunderstorm warning out toward Baker, Nassau, and Charlton. Now, will they extend this warning? I don't know. Right there around the Pontiac community, you see some green and red. That's just indicative of some gusty winds, not like a tornado threat necessarily here. We're not expecting that today, but, just kind of watching things here in the overall environment for some damaging wind and hail potential this afternoon in the local forecast. So, again, you can see the Taylor community there. I know they said this is moving, the Weather Service did south. Now, it looks like it may be kind of, let me loop it around and make sure I'm seeing this right. It looks like it's kind of drifting more southwest, but, building that way. But again, just watching that, it's pretty rural. We got the community of Taylor in there, though, and I'll take the radar off. You can see there are some homes in there and the like. You have Pontiac there as we're looking. So again, just trying to keep you guys up to date there. Just gonna continue to track the situation, obviously, as we're updating you guys here, as this is very fluid, obviously. Let me see if there's any questions or comments from any of the viewers at home. I don't see anything. But again, we're watching things, we're tracking things here. And I know just shifting back and forth a bit. Let me go to the other source right now. We're going to show you here this hail indicator around the Camilla area. You know, that's indicative of that report. There a little earlier on, a train spotter around 4:51 reporting quarter-size hail near Camilla. So that's, you know, that's enough for that severe criteria to be met. That's a, you know, inch-size hail report. Anything under an inch is technically not severe, and they got changed about maybe 15, 20 years ago. It used to be 3/4 of an inch was considered severe, but had too many warnings in the summer and just, you know, overall popping up for that. An inch or more is when you really start to have that damaging potential. So that's the storyline with that. We do have a couple different tornado watches on the national level, and I got to take something off the SPC information, trying to come up there, and I got to run an update on that because that's been changed this week, how that is processed. So that, you know, we do have a pretty significant tornado risk out here toward like Oklahoma, though. Even though we had a bad tornado situation in Michigan, the bigger risk is in Oklahoma. You see a tornado watch here in play. This is going into play here until about 10 o'clock Central Time, and you see a severe thunderstorm warning scenario south of the Shawnee community. Again, we're covering more, you know, there's more about the local weather here, but just briefly mentioning this. If you have family and friends down there, make sure they're following those local meteorologists. There's another tornado watch, and it's on the edge of 40 type degree readings there on the thermometer on Omaha. But you can see, and by the way, wintry weather back out here. I put the winter mode on in Colorado and the like, but as we look here, you see a tornado watch there, like around Great Bend. You see Salina, Concordia, Manhattan there, and Lincoln, University of Nebraska there. You have Des Moines in here, so a lot of areas under a tornado watch. So definitely something to be watchful of. You see severe thunderstorm warning in Illinois there. This is, you know, north of Springfield. So make sure you're following all of your local meteorologists, you know, like you follow me here if you're in North Florida, South Georgia, for the very latest on these two severe thunderstorm warnings that are in play. So again, we have this one here until 5, which is only, you know, less than a minute away. So we'll see if they drop this here. This is right on the edge of if it needs another warning or not right now. You know, looking at the moment that it went away. So that's good news here. But I've been watching this storm here right near that Florida-Georgia line. Florida-Georgia border there around the Pontiac community. As we're looking there, as we're tracking things. I see folks like Top Cat and watching over on YouTube. I appreciate you tuning in here and trusting me this afternoon as we try to give you guys the very latest here on the situation. So, again, just trying to give you the very latest here. Trying to give you guys the very latest on what's happening on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch here, obviously. Let me go ahead. Let me switch to the one we still have the warning on up further up in Georgia here. I'm going to switch to other source. It didn't look all that impressive on radar, but we had a confirmed report. We think it might have even had confirmed reports at the one the Florida-Georgia line. I haven't seen them pop up in the system, but it was public reported type of warning according to the Weather Service in Jax. But this one here, we actually have the LSR, the local storm report in the system. A train thumb spotter reported quarter-size hail near Camilla here this afternoon, you know, just in the last 10 minutes or so. So definitely noteworthy there as we're looking up and towards southwestern Georgia. So definitely watching that situation very carefully here as the situation does progress. I know we have an advisory, a strong storm in toward Lafayette County there. We also have strong storm in toward Marion County, not quite severe at this point. We're looking on a distant radar. And let's switch down a little bit. You can see some of the stuff there in northern Marion County. You see some wind enhancement around communities like Lowell and Spar and the like there, and Anthony. And then as you get up toward the north here, let me go ahead and see west of Mayo there. You see some lightning and some of that red on the radar there as well. So, again, just trying to give you the very latest here on what's going on what we're tracking. Let me go ahead and jump back on over right now to the other mode, though. You know, trying to switch around here to give you guys the very latest on the situation. We have this warning here in play until 5:30 in towards South Georgia, Baker and Mitchell counties. 60-mile-an-hour wind gust, quarter size hail. You see areas like Baconton there. They could be involved with this. This storm is actually moving to the north compared to the other one, which is moving more toward the south and west. Different, areas of the region have some different, flow patterns here. Just we have this pop-up stuff here, so there's not a dominant flow, consistent for the whole area here. I'll show you what we're talking about. Some of this you can kind of tell. I mean, these arrows tell that story. I mean, the wind's coming kind of from the south to the north, and that's kind of how it's moving there. And in this wind, you kind of have that movement here. It's moving a little bit more south, and west and north and west, but just the general, wind arrows kind of give you an idea, at least of the different type of directions where you're seeing with the wind today across the area and the like. So that can be helpful. Let me go ahead and see what else we might have here. You see around Bradford, it's just some light rain right now, so that's good, for folks, with interest in the fair and the like. That's better than what we were earlier on. You see in the last hour around Start, there's some areas getting over a half an inch in this darker blue, this lighter blue overwards, upwards over about 3/4 of an inch there of rain. So again, just continuing to track things, continuing to monitor things here. As we're tracking them. I know it's very important to do that. I know, on a national level, we did have tragedy strike there, according to media reports in Oklahoma last night. 2 fatalities, getting a little bit further west there in the state, per se, with a tornadic situation. So just my thoughts and prayers got everybody involved there on a national level, specifically talking about an area there within Oklahoma. You hate seeing that. This tornado watch that's in play now, though, goes all the way through Dallas. So they'll be watching in areas of North Texas. And then as you get here, the other tornado watch to the north, we actually have the ongoing, tornadic situation, or tornadic supercell that's really been wreaking havoc here in southern Michigan this afternoon. This has been wild here, not in a good way at all up there, really overachieving up that way. I know. As well, I'll switch, some things around. I'll run a loop on that here in a second, because that's probably going to become a pretty big national headline there as we look and as we track things here. Let me go ahead and run that loop. Let me go ahead and run that loop here on the other source, and then it'll load in, and it'll take a second. But this is, a storm that's been going for a couple hours or so, with tornadic activity being produced a good bit out of it as it got north of South Bend, Indiana. And into southern Michigan, really causing some big old problems there, unfortunately, and not in a good way, obviously. So I got that loop going here on my other source, and it may have been producing a tornado before it even issued the first warning on it, the Weather Service, because this is kind of, surprised. You see how we had stuff done on radar there, some hail reporting, and then you see how we had all these red boxes, purple boxes pop up for confirmed tornadic activity. Again, this is something you don't see that often, that just pop up like this. This has been a very, I guess, what's the best word to describe this? A very dangerous storm, we'll say, towards southern Michigan this afternoon at a national level. So hope if you have family and friends up there, hope you were able to let them know about, that potential, as the polygons were popping up. At least you maybe saw something like that on, on a cell phone app, something along those lines, and you're able to let them know that they had some danger coming their way. So this is south of Kalamazoo there. So that's been going for a while. The shear rate telling that story over the last hour or so. But we got to get back to our local weather right now. I just wanted, if you have family and friends up there, you have to, be, watching that, obviously. And then as you get toward Camilla there in South Georgia, we're going to go ahead and see here north of Camilla. The wind doesn't look all that impressive with this right now, but we have that hail report from a little while ago. I'm going to loop this wind motor around here, and you can kind of see what we're talking about here as we get in towards some of these different areas. This ultimately kind of moving up toward the direction of Albany there, and won't be too far away, at least from the southwest toward the airport, and I bet we'll see if it holds together. Sun sets in about an hour and a half, of course, the time change, that'll just affect how we're kind of seeing things in terms of our clocks. But, we'll be having sunset on time, in the time realm about an hour later, coming up pretty soon. So that's something to be mindful of here, in that you have more daylight in the evening, but it could be a little bit tricky at the bus stop in the morning, unfortunately, as you have kids heading out to school, obviously, and got to be really careful when to look out for them with these type of conditions here in play, in terms of it being so dark, and got to watch out for fog and the like too. Some of these mornings, maybe that could be not a great combination if you think about it here. If we have smoke in there at points, all that could not be ideal. We're already going to lose an hour of sleep, so that's something we got to be on the lookout for. An hour less of sleep, as we're looking ahead, maybe if you don't catch up over the weekend, if you're headed out Monday morning, hour less of sleep, it's darker out there, and maybe there's fog or smoke, or it's probably more fog than anything. But with these warmer than normal temperatures, it's kind of hard to get to the high-res information that far out for fog, but just a general idea, would make sense. We could have fog, and then just that combination could lead to accidents. So really be on the lookout. Watch, out there if you're headed toward, areas there where, there are like bus stops there and the like. It might be much harder to see the children there as we first start off that, time change there, and that new routine in terms of the clocks, and the sun there. So, again, just trying to keep you guys updated here on the situation. Again, we have that one warning there. We have areas there in South Georgia around Camilla being impacted there, obviously, with hail just over an inch in diameter. So let me go ahead, and continue to track this. The report was for an inch, so but it could have, there's definitely a possibility some of those stones could have been a little bit bigger, but the official report's an inch. So let me clarify that. But let me go ahead and keep looking here at some of the different information, see if I can pull up something, maybe a camera around Camilla or something on the Georgia 5-1 perspective. Yeah, we can pull this up. It's, a live look here on the Georgia 5-1 perspective. So let me go ahead and take that here full as we're looking and as we're tracking things. You can kind of tell things don't look too bad right now, as the storm axe and the worst has moved just to the north of this area, this intersection there and the like. But you could tell there was some wet type of roads there in that picture. As we go ahead and go, to the north, there's another camera maybe. Yeah, we'll pull it up. Hadn't quite got there yet with the worst, it doesn't look like, but we'll pull it up there. Georgia 5-1 camera. You see some of the traffic lights moving around just a little bit. So, again, that's kind of the storyline there right now towards South Georgia, as we're tracking things here, trying to give you the very latest. So, I know we have Top Cat Ann asking about how much rain did Bradford get today. Well, let me go ahead and go over that again, for folks just tuning in here and the like. We'll go ahead and kind of get back on in here the last hour or so. These totals indicate about a half inch or so. I know we got 0.45 east of Stark. And then let me go ahead and see what the Bradford weather stem got there right in town itself. So, talk about some of those radar estimates here. But let me give you an actual total. They're up to 71 there. We're up to 70 here after this, rain's moved out, and we, had some heating come back in. They actually got 0.71 on the rain gauge at the sheriff's office there. So a little over 7/10 of an inch there at the sheriff's office on their rain gauge there. And by the way, as I zoom out, you see a little pop of thunderstorm there on High Springs in northwestern Alachua County there. As we're tracking things. We have some light in around Waycross. Remember when thunder roars, you want to go indoors, obviously. And then, just even if there's not a warning or an advisory, just if you hear that rumble of thunder, get inside. This time of year, it's not as rampant. But as we get into the summer months, you could have this almost every day, where you really got to be vigilant here. And this stuff will be popping on up, because I think we will have a cool down about a week. But that's going to be after we have maybe around a stronger storms come through, maybe around next Thursday or maybe next Friday, which is Friday the 13th. But as we go ahead and continue to track things here in toward the weather center, we're going to go ahead and give you guys the very latest. You see around Baconton there. It's a pretty strong thunderstorm. Don't know if it's still producing hail to an inch. but they had the history on that, so the Weather Service in Tallahassee probably wants to just kind of hold on to this here, but you see this here, of course, most of us are not getting rain. We did have a 40% chance today. I had went up on that in our update last night based on seeing some of the high-res models. So the stuff, north central Florida, pretty rampant here. And it looks about right here, what we're seeing, in terms of the coverage. And like Tallahassee staying pretty dry out that way. I know they have big baseball games, coming up there, this weekend in terms of, 3 games, for fans to enjoy there at home. Not a conference series or anything yet, but still, always fun there to have those games at Dick Howser Stadium there. Mike Martin Field. As we go ahead and just continue to give you the latest, I know, let's switch back to the national storyline for a second. It's a radar-indicated tornado warning now in Michigan and Calhoun County, Michigan. It was a confirmed tornado situation earlier on, though a lot of damage based on initial reports out to the south and west there. Really volatile storm. You had a pretty high supercell composite. Even the tornado parameters were there. The instability was kind of on the edge of that. But sometimes, you can have some issues there when you have, on the edge of things here. And they still come into play here and be very problematic. So make sure you're following your local meteorologist for that. We got a bunch of warnings just popping up in Oklahoma now. And the parameter, the instability's there, the supercell composites there, and STPs there. These are, there's a lot popping up. That's one thing now, sometimes if you get so many to pop up, they can kind of take away from the environment. You had that one in Michigan all by itself, so even if the environment wasn't as primed, in theory, it could actually be more intense in terms of the damage potential because it's a situation there. Where you have it's just able to take advantage of the entire environment. These storms are all kind of competing here per se, and they may not be able to reach the full potential that they would have otherwise here because they're kind of all there close together. But I don't like seeing all these supercellular structures because they're still spaced out apart enough they could end up being pretty volatile here. We have a strong tornado risk here, significant tornado threat in place. So you need to make sure you follow your local meteorologist there out in those areas there, obviously. Tornado watch in play and the like. So be very vigilant there, obviously, as you're looking there. Chickasay, Oklahoma, east of Norman. These storms could start getting tornado warnings pretty quick south of Pauls Valley. So make sure you follow your local meteorologist there in terms of all that. So, again, trying to give you guys the very latest on all this, that's going on. We just want folks to be, paying attention, obviously, because, again, the storm up north in Michigan that's been so violent, potentially at least, at points. I don't, not necessarily saying it was a violent tornado because that means a certain range on the EF scale, but my point is, it's caused a lot of damage there this afternoon in Michigan, south of Kalamazoo. I mean, that shear rate product telling the story. This has been a very bad storm as we're looking there, as we're tracking things, just all by itself like that. That's been so problematic. Down here we have all these storms kind of popping up. Sometimes you have so many of them pop up, then they can kind of interact with each other. That can cause problems too. But if they're in a situation here, these storms where there's just so many of them, they may not be able to reach the ceiling here of the environment because they're taking one storm, taking one, section there of the overall parameters, but it's kind of, limiting things a little bit, with all of them. Each storm kind of limits the other storm a little bit, if that makes sense. So, again, you see upper 70s there, the storyline. That's, too warm for this time of year, and that's why we're having some problems. We're just too warm here to contrast in the air mass out there. Look how cold it is in Colorado in the 30s out there. And speaking of just forecast here, I do want to tell you something because I noticed in GFS here, our chance of rain maybe a little bit changed for Sunday in a way. Let me show you here on our GFS model what I'm talking about. I'm talking about for the local area, of course. We always keep an eye on winds and the like here, and they'll be watching those, different events. Not something that hopefully would be too big of a concern. I'll throw that back on here for a second. Not seeing too much with that on Saturday, but Let me go ahead and switch over to GFS because it's kind of bringing in some of this stuff off in the north and west and kind of at least bringing in some lighter rain activity in the southwest Georgia there. That'd be later Sunday. So we'll have to see how that goes to see what type of environment is with that. In fact, we should have HRRR. It should go out that far now. It's not really showing it though. Yeah, so this, we have some of that kind of weakening off. So well, the Western Florida Panhandle might have some stuff that could be, pretty strong, but then it kind of fades. So that may be end up being that story. You see a little bit of stuff trying to re-strengthen there, but overall pattern wouldn't be favorable for organized severe weather on Sunday. But there's a chance based on what I just saw of that, and there's still, more time. Let me check the NAM. Let me go to the other NAM. I mean, we'll have to see how this evolves because in a way it could, stabilize some things in parts of the area. And we'll just have to wait and see here because today we didn't have anything stabilizing us, at least until you got some of the rain to come through. So this stuff was able to just pop up on its own. So we'll have to kind of just see how that goes here as we're tracking things. I know it's a situation here. It's a situation that we're continuing to follow. Again, we got about 7/10 of an inch in towards Stark itself. The Bradford County Sheriff's Office weather stem states inside and about 0.45 here east of town on my rain gauge. So again, we'll continue to track everything. You see this storm here in South Georgia at 5:15. A severe thunderstorm was located over Baconton, or 8 miles north of Camilla, moving north at 15 miles an hour. 60-mile-an-hour wind gust, quarter size hail, Baconton, Flint, Red Store Crossroads. So again, hail threat observed with this. The wind threat is radar indicated. So again, just something to kind of bear in mind here, obviously, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. So again, let me go ahead and broaden the view back out here, broaden it way out. You see some stuff popping up into toward, West Central Florida and the like around Duet. Those folks, on the national level and Florida level, I'm sure, wanted to watch that. But back to the local area here, you see Northern Marion and the Central Marion and Southern Marion, some pretty heavy rain there with some lightning. You can see here between Spore and Anthony about 2 inches of rain in the last hour, according to radar estimates. So that can be some beneficial rain. We just need to make sure we don't get too much, that lightning, coming into play in areas that aren't getting the precip, or that could be an issue with fire, starting there, unfortunately. So, yeah, we got to be careful about that. Let me go ahead and go back toward the north here around Waycross and Ware County. You see some lightning up there as we're looking as we track things. As we get out towards southwest Georgia. Again, this didn't look all that impressive on radar, but we did have the hail report earlier on to an inch. That's why they're holding on to this, I would think. As we look, you can see we have some of these purples showing up here on the Doppler. So again, we're just trying to give you guys the very latest with all this here in toward the Weather Center. Trying to keep you guys informed, obviously, as we look at things, as we track them here. Just trying to let you guys know exactly what we're doing with here. And we're just going to continue here to watch the view. Again, you see into toward Marion County. We have some of that electrical energy there. As we're getting in really tight, Kendrick to Anthony, Silver Springs. We're just going to keep on looking at that here. Keep on tracking all that. You have around Waycross here in Ware County. Some of that heavier downpour activity. Again, trying to keep you up to date. See all these severe storm warnings in Oklahoma. Of course, we had a terrible tornado situation in Michigan. So in Michigan, we had a terrible tornado in Oklahoma last night that ended up, proving deadly, which is awful to hear. But just jumping, around here with some of the different maps. Let me go ahead and, continue here to track this. Up toward High Springs and northwestern Alachua County. Got some pretty heavy rain in there. Messing with that evening commute a little bit, maybe. Let me go ahead and see what we have in terms of some traffic cameras, maybe. We'll go ahead and try to pull up some around High Springs area, or at least, well, might have to go just east of there where it's not quite as bad because, they're not right on the interstate. So, in fact, yeah, there's not even a lot on the 75 area cameras. So, don't think it's really worth switching to those then. But maybe in Marion we can find something. Let me look at Marion on my traffic source here, the Florida 511 map. It's always kind of busy on those cameras in terms of the traffic in Marion County. Well, this is a good shot here, I think. Well, it looks like it just got adjusted, so let me try a different one. Well, maybe I can go ahead and at least take that image there. This is going to be from a moment ago. I know it's since things have adjusted, but let me get this image up for everybody at home. I'll take it full here. This is from the Florida 511 camera source just a moment ago. I was telling this story. There was some darker skies in toward Marion County, the Florida 511 camera source. A few minutes ago, I-75 southbound at mile marker 353. I know they, in the live view is since, adjusted. But that tells a story there as we're tracking things here, as we're monitoring the very latest on the situation. Again, just trying to keep you guys informed here, trying to keep you up to date, trying to keep you, just really, in tune to the minute-by-minute details. I see in Oklahoma they just had a tornado warning pop up out there. On that national level, we'll jump over there real quick. A rogue storm. You don't ever like to see those in this environment. That's more by itself, So if you have family and friends there, make sure you're following like local digital meteorologists there, maybe around Tulsa, give or take that area. You have Okfuskee and Okmulgee counties, a rogue storm with a tornado warning. As we're looking, you see Henrietta, the Okmulgee there, a tornado warning, some radar indicated rotation up in that area. So that's something you don't want to see, obviously, which, could be a sign that being all by itself like that is a concern. Some of the stuff to the west was more clustered, but this being by itself could allow it to be more intense, and don't really like to see those greens and reds coming together like that, because this could get a lot worse as it's, it's headed toward I-40 now, but eventually up toward Okmulgee there. We'll have to see, we'll see if it holds together the east side of Tulsa there later on. That's a good ways away, but other storms we'll be watching, so busy time frame there. The higher strong tornado risk maybe just east of Tulsa based on some of the stuff I was looking at. I know you can see some of our different information. You can kind of see the enhanced risk. There's some different things. I'm pulling this up in this source because, it's not coming up quite right in our other source yet. I got to update some things because the SBC changed how these are done, so the data comes through different. But even this storm here to the east, but you see that you're gonna have to watch. But see the enhanced risk. Make sure you're following folks around Joplin and Tulsa, and in the state of Arkansas there. That orange type of areas where you have a bigger danger, of course, and it goes way up even as we're looking all the way down to in toward far northern Texas. So yeah, make sure you're following your local meteorologist. Is my point here. That doesn't look all that great there in terms of seeing some of those greens and reds coming together. So that could get a lot worse. So it was way worse coloration up in Michigan earlier with those brighter greens, brighter reds. Really big problems there in southern Michigan. But you have a bunch of advisories, but it looks like our warning has just gone away now in southwest Georgia. Let me see what they said, the Tallahassee office. So let me go ahead and check here. Okay, the storm, which prompted the warning, is weakened below severe limits and no longer poses an immediate threat to life or property, so the warning will be allowed to expire at 5:30. So that's some good news there, obviously. That's definitely some good news. We'll wrap this up pretty soon unless we see another warning pop up in the local area. But let me go ahead and see what we have here. You can see that was a few minutes ago. I backed it up, see that, but now the current view. See some of this pop-up stuff. Let me just see how our advisories are looking. We're seeing a few of those. We got, let's see, it looks like 4 advisories in the area. So just under, severe limits, give or take with these. And see around Waycross, some, red showing up some lightning. You see north of Blackshear. That's not seeing an advisory yet. But that's a storm there with some lightning. Whenever thunder roars, go indoors. Could get an advisory pretty soon. Same with this one. That's a little less intense, though, as I look in closer. You have an advisory down here toward Lafayette County. Could have gusts about 40 miles an hour, half-inch hail. This storm here around High Springs, 40-mile-an-hour gust, half-inch hail. Marion County, a 40-mile-an-hour gust and half-inch hail. You need 60 and a full inch, one or the other, at least to be met to get a severe warning, with that potential. But yeah, you have an advisory around Ware County. That one's 40-mile-an-hour gust and half-inch hail. Got to watch out for the excessive cloud-to-ground lightning as well. So yeah, watching up there, down here, here as well. So yeah, quite a bit of pop-up stuff here this afternoon. Again, if you don't have the issue with the lightning causing the problems, things can definitely be, beneficial here, with this rain coming on. And you see the wind come from the east, too. It's more humid, in a lot of our areas. Not everybody, some of it's coming more from the south, but you don't want the wind coming from the north and west and, drying things out. Or in such a terrible drought situation like we always said it to you yesterday. That updated drought monitor is just, one where we have that extreme type of drought around. Not quite exceptional, but most of us with that extreme drought. So we got to be very careful. Obviously you got to be following those burn bans here because things could really be very dangerous, obviously. One little, of course, from lightning or from cigarette butt or anything, one little source of an issue there could end up being very dangerous and causing a wildfire scenario to break out. Now let me just check, make sure we don't have anything, like some of the different sources here. Just checking right now. As we're looking at, as we're tracking things. Let me see, it looks like there was a traffic crash earlier. I wonder if that was because of the weather here in toward Bradford. We've got a couple different alerts. So let's see. About an hour ago, looks like there was a traffic crash there around Stark, investigating the two-vehicle collision. Let me go ahead and jump back into Bradford so you know what I'm talking about. So Bradford County Sheriff's Office there talking that there's a traffic crash alert about an hour ago. Deputies investigating a two-vehicle collision on the bypasses north of the State Road 100 off-ramp going southbound. Traffic at that point moving, but onlooker delays and being urged to approach the area with due caution. And about 25 minutes ago, don't know exactly, if this stuff here is weather related, one or the other, but if vehicle fire there with traffic blocked in front of Lodi Elementary School there. Firefighters had the fire under control with no injuries, but major delays they're about right now expected up that area in Lodi Elementary. So don't know if they're weather related, but still worth noting their traffic crash bypasses north of the State Road 100 off-ramp there about an hour ago, and a report about 30 minutes ago of a vehicle fire on Lodi. So, yeah, kind of active there on this Friday as we're looking. There's where Lodi is. I mean, if you're in Bradford, you probably know, but, folks outside of Bradford and, a few counties around here might not know where Lodi is, but that's where we're talking there with the map as we're looking, as we're tracking. But, again, we're looking here in Marina, quite a bit of heavy rain. I mean, some areas getting a couple inches in an hour there. You got a little bit of a hail indicator popping up there, right just north of the Georgia and Florida line. But I think that's going to wrap it for now. We'll pop back in if we need to. Again, it's more about local weather, so unless we have like a tornado emergency on the national level, we're not going to pop back in for anything like that. We were on for the local here over the last 45 minutes or so, of course. It's all about protecting you, your friends, and your family. So that's going to do it here for now. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll pop back in if warranted. We're going to watch things. We're going to track things again, in terms of like organized severe weather around here. We might have that in about a week, maybe 6 days from now, give or take. But this is not organized severe weather in a traditional sense, but some pop-up stuff causing some issues, on this Friday, on this March 6, 2026, as people try to enjoy those different outdoor event rounds. Obviously, got to be aware of when you hear thunder rumble, just whenever thunder roars, go indoors. But for now, thanks so much for tuning in. Try to enjoy your weekend because, most of us not even seeing that rain. And as we look tomorrow, lower chances, maybe a little higher on Sunday. Some of that stuff coming from the north and west could change the forecast a little bit, though, depending on how that evolves. And then, we'll have lower chances coming up before we have higher chances, maybe toward next Thursday, the 12th, and maybe Friday the 13th. We'll see. And some of that could be stronger a more organized system that could try to, ultimately lead into some cooler air here across our area. So we'll have to just kind of pay attention to the very latest on all that, obviously, as we look around, as we track things here in toward the weather center. I know, just real quick, I'm checking something here. I just want to look at some of the latest temperature data forecast information. And yeah, we'll start to see a cool down. Instead of maybe 80s to 90, we'll have, closer into the 70s. And then maybe in the following week, maybe highs is in the 60s now. That might sound good, but if we don't get enough rain from the event toward next week, into next weekend to next weekend, maybe more probably the end of next week, then ultimately that cool down, if we get winds from the north and west, that could end up increasing the fire danger with lower humidity here. We're still in a very significant drought. So something to be mindful of. But for now, thanks for tuning in and trusting me. I just try to enjoy things, as there's quite a bit of outdoor activities. There are quite a bit of them going on around the area.